University of Edinburgh. I'm a lecturer in public policy. My job title has changed since I said the details. And I work as well for What Works in Scotland, which is a platform, a network of universities and other institutions working to connect research, policy and practice to improve public services and to improve policy and policy innovation. I'm really thankful to the organizers for the opportunity. As you can gather by my accent, I come from Edinburgh. It's fairly obvious. Yeah. Actually, I come from Spain, from Galicia, the northwest of Spain. And it's been the privilege of a lifetime to be in Scotland at this point in time, to be a witness to the democratic process we just went through together. And many back in Spain are really jealous because the Catalonian process, as you probably know, is not as civilized and citizen-driven as many would like. What I want to do today is to get us thinking, hopefully, about how we might rethink our democracy and our institutions so that the aspirations of all the citizens that got engaged in the referendum and the vibrancy of those conversations that happen in communities around the country, how can we harness that? How can we get that and use that energy to improve the way we make decisions, the way we make policies, the way we tackle social inequalities, the way we solve problems? And that's what I mean by participatory democracy. This is an outline of what I'm hoping to talk through in the next 25 minutes. I'll try to stick to time so that I really want to hear your views and comments and reactions and questions, of course. I'll say something about what I mean by participatory democracy. I'll give a few notes on the policy context that, in my view, presents us with the opportunity and the momentum to actually develop some of these democratic innovations in Scotland. Then I will mention some of the usual pitfalls that you will be very familiar with. Part of what I've done over the last few years is to work with practitioners around the country, and particularly with community planning officers trying to make community planning work, which is quite a challenge all across the country. Yeah? So a lot of my work has been very close to practice, and I don't sit behind my desk sorting out the world in theory and so on. I like to, actually I come from the world of practice myself, and I think that I always try to keep close to it so that we keep it relevant and so that we can bring research to bear on the issues we face. Then I'll introduce a couple of democratic innovations, but I will focus on one that is gaining momentum in Scotland and one that might have some traction at local level across Scotland, and that's participatory budgeting. And then I'll conclude with some thoughts on what I believe, and I hope you will agree, could be the role of community workers, of CLD and NCDOs, not just in the north, of course, across the country. And then because usually I would stop there, but very often then I get questions that are based on myths about citizen participation. So I thought this time I'm going to shortcut and I'm going to actually anticipate and dispel a couple of myths that are quite widespread. So let's get on with it. What do I mean by participatory democracy? Well, of course, people participate in all sorts of ways. People volunteer, people set up social enterprises, people start community groups. All of that obviously is necessary for a vibrant democracy. But I would argue that perhaps the area where we haven't advanced enough is in actually finding ways of involving citizens directly in policy and decision making. So, involving citizens in the everyday work of institutions, in solving problems, in tackling inequalities, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to focus on that kind of, on that dimension of participatory democracy, the involvement, the direct involvement of citizens in policy decision making. And the policy context, you will be very familiar with the tons of documents that come to your inbox all the time. That's not just community planning, but also from national level and so on and so forth. But arguably, when you take a look at what's been going on in the last 2-3 years, all of those documents, all of those policy statements, all of those frameworks put emphasis on community empowerment, citizen participation, community engagement, and so on. But the kind of participation I'm talking about, involving citizens directly in policy making, usually suffers from three problems. The first one is a lack of inclusion and diversity. It's really, really hard to get beyond a self-selected vocal minority. That is a problem we all often struggle with as we try to set up participatory processes. And that is a crucial problem because unless we involve a diversity of citizens, then we cannot, hand in heart, present a particular process as legitimate. And we cannot carry that narrative and make it count. And that's the trap that a lot of processes fall in. It might be a process that was well conducted, but because there wasn't a diversity of people involved, then decision makers can do very little with it, and we carry on with a lead-driven policy making. A second challenge that we usually face is that of enabling high-quality interpersonal communication. Too often, unfortunately, although sometimes in the referendum, I think we have all been surprised by the quality of dialogue, although we have also seen plenty of adversarial and confrontational dynamics. But too often we communicate in ways that are quite ritualistic. We engage in an exchange of monologues, we have the habit of posturing or just engaging in confrontational patterns, those sorts of things that prevent us from having meaningful conversations. And that's what I mean by increasing the quality of dialogue and deliberation. Later on there's a workshop and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the third problem is the impact that processes have, the connection. Very often people become very cynical about these processes because they are not clearly connected to decision making. That doesn't mean that, for instance, local councillors will have to take on board everything that comes from a participatory process. But if officials and councillors were transparent about what's been taken on board and what not, and for what reasons, I think we will eliminate so much cynicism across the country and across our communities about public engagement. So, the impact and the connection to policy and decision making. And generally, I think, after 9 years of observing these things across Escobar and doing research on them, I think too often we go for quantity rather than quality. So we have 100 consultations on all sorts of issues that a lot of people perhaps don't care about. Instead of having 5, 10 high quality, more expensive, but high quality and of course resource intensive, but again, high stakes issues that people really care about. And arguably, I would say that we need to get rid of half of all the consultations we do and just do high-profile processes of high quality with new, more cutting-edge methods on issues that really matter to people and with real power on the table to share across different partners and participants. So, and those are the kind of challenges that a family of democratic innovations, of participatory processes that have been developing and unfolding around the world over the last 20 years and try to address. Some of them you might have heard about mini-publics. I wonder how many of you have heard about mini-publics? Okay, if I say, okay, so mini-publics is a family of methods that includes planning cells in Germany, the Danish Consensus Conference, the citizen jury, the American model, the Citizens Assembly, which has been used also in Canada and Netherlands, and so on and so forth. A series of mechanisms for involving citizens based on 3 key principles. First of all, in order to begin to involve and try and involve those who usually don't engage with these processes, instead of allowing people to self-select themselves into the process, we use